If I could have everybody just get seated, we'll get started for the evening. We got a few stragglers coming in. All right, good evening. Welcome everyone. Thanks for coming out tonight. My name is Natalie Edmiston. I am the Vice Chair of the Gray Republican Committee. And we are honored to be able to host this event with the local committees around us and everyone else who's a friend of the Republican Party. Thank you for coming out. I hope that everyone's will enjoy tonight and really get fired up about these issues. We're excited to bring some attention to things that are going on in politics today. Our first speaker tonight, his name is Peter Brown. He is our chair, and he's been part of the committee for about over a year now, and we have been really excited because he's brought energy and new ideas to our group and he's helped getting us organized. So after being born and raised in Maine, Peter left for the West Coast, and he raised his family in Virginia, where him and his wife raised their 4 kids. He returned to Maine several years ago and is thrilled to once again sit on the rocky seacoast and admire the ocean here. He is an author. He wrote 2 books. He's the author of the book for teenagers called The True Love Thing to Do, an interactive workbook on finding love and preparing for an enduring marriage, and is working on one new book called The Living Compass of Kindness and Compassionate Love, essays, poems, and stories about a world of love and beauty. He hosts the Love, Freedom, and the World YouTube channel, which is focused on a hybrid of spirituality, freedom, centered cultural and political issues. He writes frequently at his website, Peter Falkenberg Brown, and that's Falkenberg with an E in the middle, just in case you're wondering and you lose his site there. So we are excited to introduce Peter Falkenberg Brown. Everybody, warm welcome for Peter. Thank you.
Well, Jack, a military veteran, has suggested correctly that we should do the Pledge of Allegiance. So why don't we stand?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Jack. Thank you all for coming. What a lovely evening. Thank you, Natalie, for introducing me. Well, I first want to just say thank you to a number of people, the Cumberland Town Committee, the chairman Bob Vail and Meredith Strang-Burgess and Peter Bingham were so gracious as to co-host this event with the town of Gray, the Gray Republican Committee. Without them, we wouldn't be here, so I'm very thankful for them. Yeah. I also want to thank 22 other Republican committees, town Republican committees of Cumberland County that co-sponsored this event. And if you've seen the flyer, you've seen their list. And we could not have done this event without every single one of those towns and the 9 nonprofit organizations, including the Cumberland County Republican Committee, and also our very own Representative Sue Austin from Gray. So, yay. We also have Representative Heidi Sampson here, who with her team will be asking you to sign some people's referendums. I'm going to have her explain that before the final question and answer session starts so that you'll know what's there, and then you can do that at the end of the speeches. Also, I want to thank the town of Cumberland, Pete Bingham Jr. and Chief Charles Rumsey, Lieutenant Dave Young, and their team for just really making this work for us. I really appreciate it. And of course, thanks to Matt Gagnon and Charlie Hunkanen for being our speakers, because without them we wouldn't be here either. So this is a wonderful team effort, and I'm very grateful. We'll have 3 speakers between 20 and 30 minutes each. At the end of each talk, we'll have 5 minutes of Q&A directed to that speaker. At the end of the 3rd speaker, we'll have a Q&A session that's longer, that you can ask questions of any one of the 3 speakers, and they'll come up to the podium and answer the question. If your cell phone hasn't been put on silent, please do, like the movie theaters. And during the Q&A, we'll have the email sign-up sheets go through the chairs. If you haven't signed our email list, we're going to be informing people who sign up of news from Gray, but because there are towns that are co-sponsoring, if you put down your city, then we can give your name to the town committee for that city as well, and you can get news from them too. And let's see, we have a donation bucket in the back. You can put $100 bills in there to your heart's content. At the Blueberry Festival, someone put a $100 bill in the bucket right in front of me, and I almost had a heart attack. Whoa! So we like $100 bills. And we also have raffle prizes here that are just tremendous, donated by all kinds of folks, including Representative Austin. And so we have a raffle thing at the back. During the Q&A, you can go and buy raffle tickets and sign those things, as long as you're quiet, because we will have Q&A during that time. And let's see. We also have town committee monthly meetings in Gray. The meetings are on the 4th Wednesday of each month at the Gray Public Library. The next meeting is on September 25th, Wednesday. They're always at 6:30. Our website is grayrepublicans.org, so you can go there for news of that. And also, many of the town committees that are co-sponsoring have their meetings, whether monthly or at different time slots. But we do encourage everyone to go to your meetings there. So, I don't think I forgot anything from that. So it's time for me to give my talk. So, you know, there's a joke in the South. I spent 21 years in Virginia where I learned how to say y'all. And there's a joke with Baptist pastors down there. If they hold up their watch during a talk, they say, "What does it mean when you hold up your watch?" And if you're a Baptist pastor, and the answer is absolutely nothing. They'll talk forever. But I'm not going to talk forever. I do have some notes, which I will be referring to. And it may look like they're thick, but they're not thick. It just has a big typeface, so I can take my glasses off. Because I'm 65 almost, so you need glasses. So, I'm going to start my talk with some controversial, politically incorrect words. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. What a fine group of men and women are gathered here tonight. You are all stellar examples of masculinity and femininity, and are wonderful representatives of the human race. And for those words, I would be censored and censured in some venues, because those are politically correct taboos. Have any of you been censored online or anywhere? I know I have. Recently I sent out a tweet on Twitter, and it stated, "You can bet 100% that if the Christians in Nigeria were slaughtering the Islamic Fulanis, the American leftist celebs would be all over it. Evil Christians. But no, it's the Islamists killing the Christians, so celebs just simply yawn. They must hate Christians a lot to be so cold." And for that, I violated Twitter's hateful conduct policy and was locked out of my account until I reluctantly removed that post so I could do more tweets. By the way, when I say leftist, I do not mean liberal. Liberals are mostly good-hearted Americans who love freedom for all. Leftists do not love freedom for all. So next question. Do any of you self-censor among your family, your friends, or at your work where you want to give an opinion about conservative politics, but you don't? Anybody? A lot. I do too. Well, in Germany, only 18% of the survey respondents stated that they agreed with the statement that it was possible to express oneself fully in public. Only 18%. So therefore, what is the status of freedom in 2019? Well, today we have colleges, institutions, town governments banning common sense words like ladies and gentlemen, he, him, his, and she, her, hers, American, America, illegal immigrant, male, female, Mr., Mrs., Ms., husband, wife, mailman, policeman, and man-made. Non-binary preferred pronouns are becoming mandatory in school. And in the city code of Berkeley, California, manholes are becoming maintenance holes. Man-made is becoming human-made. She, her, he, him are becoming they and them. Politically correct speech, in my opinion, is simply newspeak by another name. In George Orwell's novel 1984, Syme, a specialist in newspeak, meets the protagonist Winston and explains the rise of newspeak. He says, "Don't you see that the whole aim of newspeak is to narrow the range of thought? In the end, we shall make thought crime literally impossible because there will be no words in which to express it. The revolution will be complete when the language is perfect. Has it ever occurred to you, Winston, that by the year 2050, at the very latest, not a single human being will be alive who could understand such a conversation as we are having now?" Well, in 30 years it will be 2050, and I predict that George Orwell's analysis of society may come true, because today, language, thought, speech, and religious beliefs and practices are giving ground, retreating in front of totalitarianism all around the world, and are being heavily eroded here in America, the last best hope for freedom. Many social opinions are becoming verboten. History is being rewritten. Statues of very important people are being torn down. White Christian men, both old and young, are becoming the new villains in the left's efforts to divide and conquer the human race. 8-year-old Ava Martinez, cute as a button, is receiving death threats now because of her mini AOC video parodies of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Have any of you seen them? Yes. She's receiving death threats, and her parents have deleted her social media accounts to protect her from the hateful left. Democratic Congresswoman Frederica Wilson stated, "Those people who are online making fun of members of Congress are a disgrace. We're going to shut them down and work with whoever it is to shut them down, and they should be prosecuted." Poor mini AOC. Reza Aslan, the Islamist supremacist, the former CNN contributor and cannibal who ate human brain tissue in India, recently tweeted, "After today, there is no longer any room for nuance. The president is a white nationalist terror leader. His supporters, all of them, are by definition white nationalist terror supporters. The MAGA hat is a KKK hood." Do we have any MAGA hats here? No. Oh, phew. No, you should. You should all go buy one right now. "And this evil racist scourge," Aslan said, "this evil racist scourge must be eradicated from society." That's what the Nazis said. Twitter has not removed his tweet for violating their hate speech guidelines. Restrictions on free speech are now becoming restrictions on civil rights. Leftists are fully committed to the denial of civil rights to groups of individuals whom they despise. Instead of making colored-only lunch counters, leftists today are removing the lunch counters altogether. Conservatives are being censored and kicked off Google, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Vimeo, Amazon, WordPress, and other web hosting platforms. They're being rejected, service denied by hotels, banks, credit card companies, payment processors, restaurants, services like Eventbrite, and even Uber and Lyft. The left's attacks on free speech and its attendant civil rights are global, rapid, comprehensive, and powerful. And China is the worst offender, with its social credit score system, which, in the words of Chinese authorities, will, quote, ensure that the bad people in society don't have a place to go, and while good people can move freely and without obstruction. France has convinced Facebook to give it the government in France, Facebook user identification of those those French Facebook users who are possibly committing hate speech. Sonia Cissé of the law firm Linklaters in Paris stated, "It is a strong signal in terms of regulation. Hate speech is no longer considered part of freedom of speech. It is now on the same level as terrorism," in France. Facebook has also started a civil rights task force to, quote, "ensure civil rights concerns raised by outside groups are escalated promptly to decision makers so that they can be considered and acted on quickly." Facebook's audit calls for stronger censorship of hate speech and, quote, "hateful ideologies." Humor will no longer be a protected category. Don't laugh on Facebook. Facebook has created a dangerous individuals and organizations policy, and they've added conservatives to that list who, although they are controversial, are by no stretch of the imagination dangerous, including Alex Jones, Laura Loomer, Gavin McInnes, Milo Yiannopoulos, and Paul Joseph Watson. On Facebook, the 119 actually dangerous Antifa groups are not listed in the dangerous category. The Antifa group Smash Racism DC posted this on Facebook without any censure. "This is a message to Ted Cruz, Brett Kavanaugh, Donald Trump, and the rest of the racist, sexist, transphobic, and homophobic right-wing scum. You are not safe. We will find you. We will expose you. We will take from you the peace you've taken from so many others." They were not censored. Facebook has a policy against posting death threats, but specifically allows them for those listed as a dangerous individual. In 2016, Britain arrested almost 4,000 people based on Section 127 of the Communications Act 2003, which makes it illegal to intentionally, quote, "cause annoyance, inconvenience, or needless anxiety to another." And they've arrested 4,000 people in that year for that. Police ignored offensive speech that was anti-Semitic or anti-white. Instead, they focused on so-called hate speech online. Instead of doing something useful, for example, stopping the Muslim rape gangs. The British activist Tommy Robinson just recently went to prison for the second time for the same offense. And what was his crime? He was doing video commentary outside a courthouse during the trial of a huge Muslim rape gang that had raped girls as young as 11 every night for years. YouTube banned a video of Tommy's message from prison because it violated their hate speech policy. Robert Spencer, the author of The History of Jihad from Muhammad to ISIS, not to be confused with the white supremacist Richard Spencer, recently stated about Tommy's conviction, "Britain has become a shabby little police state in which it is illegal to criticize Islam and mass Muslim migration in Britain today. Its death as a free society is by its own hand." And I just have to think, the poor British people, what would Winston Churchill do? Examples of Britain's tragic transformation into an Orwellian state are everywhere, including the arrest of a young mother named Kate Scottow in front of her children, locked in a cell for 7 hours. Her laptop and cell phone have not been returned after 2 months. Her crime? She called a transgender woman a man on Twitter. Another example in Britain is the British doctor David Macarith, who was fired for refusing to, quote, "call any 6-foot-tall, bearded man madam on his manager's whim." Back in America, things are almost as bad. Immigrants are coming to America hoping to find the land of the free, but some of them are not finding it to be the land of the free. If America is not going to be the land of the free, where will anyone go in the world? There's no place left. Ridvan Aydemir, the apostate prophet and ex-Muslim from Turkey, was banned from Twitter because he criticized Islam. In his video, Twitter Bans Criticism of Islam, he stated, "Whenever I see something like this, I lose hope. I lose hope. I lose my love for the Western culture. I lose my love for this culture of freedom that seems to be dying. Maybe I shouldn't be surprised considering that a major Saudi prince is a big shareholder at Twitter, bigger than Jack Dorsey, who is a co-founder of Twitter. Maybe this is the reason why Twitter acts so un-Western, so un-American, so embarrassingly stupid. Project Veritas interviewed a Google insider, Jen Janai, who stated, "We all got screwed over in 2016. Again, it wasn't just us, it was the people got screwed over, the news media got screwed over, like everybody got screwed over. So we're rapidly been like, what happened there, and how do we, i.e. Google, how do we prevent it from happening again?" Research psychologist Robert Epstein recently told Tucker Carlson of Fox News that Google, Facebook, Twitter, and Amazon can, quote, manipulate and flip 15 million votes in the 2020 elections. Previously, he stated, one Google shift in search results on Election Day in 2018 shifted from 800,000 to 4.6 million votes to Democratic candidates. That's serious stuff for our work. So, what is the status of freedom in 2019? I would describe it as a DEFCON 1 emergency, with DEFCON 1, of course, being the worst. In the Patriot Post, Arnold Allert stated, only a radical movement sensing its moment is finally at hand would be that forthcoming. Hence, 2020 is the critical mass election. Either those wholly contemptuous of this nation and its founding principles get thoroughly repudiated, or the last best hope for mankind can hang out a going out of business sign on the Capitol dome. Totalitarianism has many casualties. Most heartbreaking are perhaps the victims of the left's long march through the institutions, our young people. Dennis Prager and Adam Carolla are creating a documentary film called No Safe Spaces. The film's promotional text states, today's campus snowflake is tomorrow's teacher, judge, or elected official. And if that doesn't scare you, maybe you should reconsider. No matter where you live or what you do, if you don't think the way they do, they will attempt to silence and punish you. In my opinion, the most pernicious agents of tyranny today are Marxism, Socialism, and Islam. And lest I be misunderstood, I do not mean that all Muslims are agents of tyranny. The problems with Islam are its orthodox, jihadist attitudes toward non-Muslims in its doctrine and ideology, its supremacist attitudes which good-hearted, freedom-loving Muslims reject. Muslims, we must remember, risk their lives if they criticize Islam or try to leave Islam. Both actions are punishable by death. Sheikh Yusuf al-Qaradawi, an Egyptian Orthodox Muslim cleric who is an influential spiritual leader of the Muslim Brotherhood, stated in an inadvertent, boy, can you say big words quickly? He stated in an inadvertent, number one, absolutely powerful indictment of Islam, in my opinion, quote, if they had gotten rid of the apostasy punishment, Islam wouldn't exist today. Think about that. Marxists and Islamists have become allies against their common enemy, Judeo-Christian Western and American civilizations. Saul Alinsky, the leftist radical, has been a guiding light to hard-left Democrats for many years, including Hillary Clinton. In his book, Rules for Radicals, he wrote, the organizer's first job is to create the issues or problems. The organizer must first rub raw the resentments of the people of the community. He must search out controversy and issues rather than avoid them, for unless there is controversy, people are not concerned enough to act. In the book Dark Agenda, The War to Destroy Christian America, David Horowitz wrote, Saul Alinsky taught his followers, you don't organize to help the poor and oppressed. You organize for power. I was going to do a Bernie Sanders imitation of that. I think he might agree with all of these statements by Saul Alinsky. A 1960s SDS, a Students for a Democratic Society radical, wrote, the issue is never the issue. The issue is always the revolution. I think he believes that. Just watch what he says. I'm not a good mimic, but anyway, what the heck. Leftists understand that if they own the minds and hearts of our children, the children of conservatives, they will eventually, probably win victory. Therefore, they've been radicalizing the sources of information that are fed to children and adults for many years, 60 years at least, in the universities, K-12 schools, the media, and Hollywood. Teen Vogue is a hard left source of propaganda, not just fashion, if you were wondering. A writer for the Daily Signal, Jarrett Stepman, recently went to a socialism conference. Teen Vogue hosted a panel at Socialism 2019 called System Change, Not Climate Change. Youth climate activists in conversation with Teen Vogue. The panel moderator was Lucy Diavolo, news and political editor at the publication, who is transgender. I know there's maybe a contradiction in inviting Teen Vogue to a socialism conference, especially because the youth spin-off brand is a magazine so associated with capitalist excess, Diavolo said. If you're not familiar with our work, I encourage you to read Teen Vogue's coverage of social justice issues, capitalism, revolutionary theory, and Karl Marx. Or you can check out the right-wing op-eds that accuse me of clickbait communism and teaching your daughters Marxism and revolution. The panel attendees responded enthusiastically. Suffice to say, the barbarians are beyond the gates. We are in the tower, Diavolo boasted. Leftist words and propaganda are damaging, but the true colors of the left are displayed when they descend into violence. Today, the militant arm of the hard left Democrats is Antifa. You saw the cartoon on our poster. In the 1930s, Antifa, which is short for Antifaschistische Aktion, in my dreadful German, were the German Communist Party's version of the Nazi brown shirts. Today, Antifa is supported by Refuse Fascism, a project of the Revolutionary Communist Party USA. Go to their website, you can see it. Antifa's violence is increasing. The journalist Andy Ngo was recently hospitalized in Portland, Oregon, after a brutal Antifa attack at a rally. In Tacoma, Washington, the Antifa member Willem Van Spronsen firebombed an ICE facility and was shot and killed. The left-wing media downplay Antifa attacks. Even though the Dayton shooter, Connor Betts, is a leftist who appears to support Antifa, the media ignore that. Even after he wrote, "Kill every fascist, Nazis deserve death and nothing else, and I want socialism, and I'll not wait for the idiots to finally come round." Methods of totalitarians include propaganda, lies, and mass delusion. Many Americans aren't aware of the source and method of the leftist narrative that they hear in the media. They simply listen to NPR, read the New York Times, believe it, and that's that. They don't really dig deeper behind it. But the left has been revealing that they have been the source of so much of that for many years. Ion Mihai Pacepa, the former acting chief of Romania's espionage service, wrote, "As a spy chief and a general in the former Soviet satellite of Romania, I produced the very same vitriol Kerry repeated to the US Congress almost word for word and planted it in leftist movements throughout Europe. KGB chairman Yuri Andropov managed our anti-Vietnam War operation. During my last meeting with Andropov, he said wisely, 'Now all we have to do is to keep the Vietnam-era anti-Americanism alive.' And they have done so. The left uses the strategy of repeated lies. If you say John Smith is a child molester and a rapist, and that lie is repeated over and over again by many people, it's almost a surety that John Smith will be ruined with no evidence at all. That's what the left has been doing. But still, not all leftists are conscious liars. Some, I believe, fervently believe that America is evil. When I watch the actress Alyssa Milano sobbing on video about the immigration crisis, as she recently did, in her words, that it's such a terrible thing because it's destroying children's lives because of, quote, arbitrary lines in the sand. I believe she's sincere. I believe she really believes that, even though her judgment about the immigration crisis is botched, because it would be wonderful to remove the arbitrary lines in the sand in the kingdom of heaven on earth, which isn't here yet. But still, millions and millions of people are believers in the leftist narrative about America that is an evil country. Why is that so? How did it happen? Stella Morabito, writing for The Federalist in an article called "How to Escape the Age of Mass Delusion," wrote, The emotional stew in which we are now boiling doesn't allow logic or reason to prevail. We can never fight back as long as we are in the cloud, in the dark, about how our minds can be manipulated. So we absolutely must try to fully understand the methods and tactics of mental coercion and share that knowledge with others as much as possible. She referenced a 1956 book, The Rape of the Mind, The Psychology of Thought Control, Menticide, and Brainwashing, written by the Dutch-American psychoanalyst Joost Meerloo. In his chapter, Mental Contagion and Mass Delusion, Meerloo wrote, "Mass delusion can be induced. It is simply a matter of organizing and manipulating collective feelings in the proper way. If one can isolate the mass, allow no free thinking, no free exchange, no outside corrective, and can hypnotize the group daily with noises, with press and radio and television, with fear and pseudo-enthusiasms, any delusion can be instilled. Delusions, carefully implanted, are difficult to correct. Reasoning no longer has value, for the lower, more animal type of thinking becomes deaf to any thought on a higher level. If one reasons with a totalitarian who has been impregnated with official cliches, he will sooner or later withdraw into his fortress of collective totalitarian thinking. The mass delusion that gives him his feelings of belonging, of greatness, of omnipotence is dearer to him than his personal awareness and understanding." To me, that sounds like college. And Charlie will talk about that. And I'm looking forward to it. So, my friends, we must save freedom and save civilization. America is at the 11th hour and 59th minute of a crisis of identity. Will America survive? How long? What brings a civilization to ruin? Dennis Prager stated in recent testimony at the U.S. Senate, "It breaks my heart for America because no good country can survive when its people have contempt for it." What can we do to save America, to save freedom, and to save civilization? I believe that liberals and conservatives first have to affirm that we want to be free and that gaining a life of freedom requires thought and comprehensive dialogue. Totalitarians don't like freedom of thought at all. Orwell wrote in 1984, "Orthodoxy means not thinking, not needing to think. Orthodoxy is unconsciousness." Finding truth requires questioning. In the 1885 preface to Leaves of Grass, the poet Walt Whitman wrote, "Re-examine all you have been told at school or church or in any book. Dismiss whatever insults your own soul." And after that reflection, we must know the enemy, know the hostile forces on the left, how they've been working against the cause of freedom. And then we must use the power of information, education, elections, votes, and the law. The left has done so over and over again. David Horowitz in Dark Agenda talked frequently about the 9 unelected permanent for life Supreme Court justices, changing over time, who have radically damaged America with decisions about prayer in school, abortion, and many other topics, against the will of the American people. Defending free speech is complicated. We don't want to give too much power to government. Matt will speak about solutions to this issue, but just a tidbit from Senator Ted Cruz, who has suggested that there are 3 possible legal methods to stop big tech. Number 1, utilizing Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act by forcing social media platforms to act as platforms like the telephone line, not publishers. Number 2, breaking them up as monopolies. Number 3, hitting them for fraud and breach of contract based on the view that users don't expect to be censored and the platforms are not transparent or accountable. We don't want government to define social media companies as publishers and then force them to censor speech. But finally, the most important thing of all, in my opinion, is for all of us to stand up and fight back. Conservatives have not often been fighting because they're busy with their lives, but leftists are on fire with revolution. To repeat again the words of Teen Vogue's transgender political editor, Lucy Diavolo, "The barbarians are beyond the gates. We are in the tower." We must speak out and never apologize for truth-telling. If we apologize to haters because we told the truth, then we betray ourselves and the truth. For what gain? Conservatives have had enormous defeats in the last 60 years. We cannot allow ourselves to give up, though. Conservatives, in my opinion, and liberals together need to go to a spiritual valley forge where we can regroup, toughen up, and train ourselves for victory. I think we need to follow the example of the magnificent armed forces who, in their oath of enlistment, state, "I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic." We should do the same. President Lincoln was asked to replace General Ulysses S. Grant, and he simply said, "I can't spare this man. He fights." Well, President Trump also fights. He's fighting in Manchester right now. Anyway, we couldn't be there. We had to be here. He pushes back against the media, for which he's criticized, but I believe that his sometimes rough responses are needed to fight back against the leftist privileged class, the nomenclatura, who constantly accuse him of being a racist, a Nazi, a Hitler, and then accuse conservatives and Trump supporters of the same litany of lies and insults, all designed to drive us into submission. We cannot let them. To fight that narrative, we need to challenge and debunk the numerous forbidden topics of the left, both in public and in private. Henry Cabot Lodge, the first Senate Majority Leader, stated in 1919, "The United States is the world's best hope. Beware how you trifle with your marvelous inheritance, for if we stumble and fall, freedom and civilization everywhere will go down in ruin." I'm reminded of Shakespeare's Henry V. King Henry's forces won the Battle of Agincourt, but on October 25th, 1415, they were vastly outnumbered, 9,000 to 30,000. He urged his soldiers to fight with honor and know that on St. Crispian's Day, we in it shall be remembered. We few, we happy few, we band of brothers, and I will add, sisters too. Thank you. So I guess we have 5 minutes of Q&A for this section. Yes?
I used to be a Democrat not so long ago, and I have to say this is an issue that it doesn't only affect Republicans. This affects independents, moderates, anyone who even slightly deviates from anything that the left says. How do you think people can be brought into the fold? Because this isn't just a Republican issue, as you said. It's a liberal and conservative issue.
I agree. And let me turn on this microphone. If anybody needs a mic to speak so they can be heard, we have one here. I think it can be things can change by dialogue, by free speech, by comprehensive communication about these issues. The biggest problem I think that we're facing is that the left does not want to allow us to speak. So if we can speak, I mean, in my extended family with my relatives, I'm the only Republican I know. It's extremely difficult to talk about any of these issues because I think the mass delusion, the boiling pot that Morabito mentioned, things are so hot that on the left, and liberals have received that infection, in my opinion. They've become so infected with the idea that anyone that supports issues of freedom are haters. And we're not haters. They're hateful toward us. So somehow we have to, I think it can only be solved through speech and dialogue, but it's very difficult.
Especially when you have certain candidates on the Democratic ticket saying that there's no more room for dialogue about certain things.
That way lies totalitarianism. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, in the back. If you want to stand up and...
I'm in the back.
Okay.
Good place to be. We always used to be there at church, too. So good list where you always sit in the back.
Could you stand up so people can hear?
Can everybody not hear me?
Okay. Go ahead.
It's just a historical note. I was reading a book on, I can't even remember the title, but talking about Joseph Goebbels. And to go back to Facebook, et cetera, is that historically, Joseph Goebbels things like this, and those people grew up to run the, the concentration camps and all these things. So it's really interesting that, I'd say there's nothing new under the sun, but the whole point is to indoctrinate, and it began at people would just learn history instead of forget it, or just, anyway, I just thought that it goes to Facebook, it goes to Twitter, it goes to all of these things, Hollywood, etc., that they use the media to, in effect, indoctrinate people without people really even knowing. But I thought it was interesting that girls said that without the radio, they never, paraphrase, they would never have been able to accomplish what they accomplished in Nazi Germany without indoctrinating the young people and bringing them up, which is really where it started. So.
Thank you, that's very true. And of course, it highlights the fact that the Americans' protection of free speech is so momentous and necessary for the world. It hasn't been everywhere else, so we've got to preserve it. Thank you. Yes, in the back.
Yes, somebody recently said that a racist was a conservative who's winning an argument with a liberal. And I thought there's a lot of truth in that, but the words racist, Islamophobe, xenophobe, homophobe, misogynist, et cetera, are used primarily to intimidate through smear and marginalize and delegitimize people when they don't really have any actually good arguments. But I'd be curious, Peter, if you could, I have my own strategies for responding to such things. I'd be curious to know what you would recommend people say when they hear that being spoken about somebody they know or possibly about themselves. How would you respond effectively to push back against that?
The first thing I would say is that if you're in an argument and you start calling someone racist or any of the phobes, it means you have nothing to say. They don't have any content. They don't want to debate. They don't want to dialogue. They want to shut the other person down because they can't win the argument. And I think that one of the things that I've realized is that everyone wants to be free, including a totalitarian, including a dictator. No one wants to be told what to do. So if we go back to the person who's using the phobic language and all that kind of stuff and racism, I start by saying, do you want to be free? Do you want to be told what to say? Do you want to live in Orwell's 1984? No? Well, neither do I. So we've got common ground. But the phobe language it's intellectually lazy and stupid. That's my response.
Thank you.
Yes. If you want to, sure. If you want to use we should have a wireless mic, but we don't, so.
2 quick points. Whenever I'm called a racist, I just fold like a cheap suit. So thank you for the advice. I was wondering, our current politics today with a lot of this stuff that's going on, do you think it was accelerated by the outcome of the election of 2008, presidential election?
2008.
Yes. Had it gone differently, do you think we would be?
I don't know.
Would biological men be competing with women and winning trophies, and would people be making Baker's Day cakes for weddings they don't want to bake cakes for? I mean, it's all kinds of stuff like that that society just seems to have accepted.
I think Barack Obama increased racism in our country. If that's an answer to your question.
Okay, so you think that was a consequential election as far as?
Yes, no, I do, because I think he stood up there after like a police shooting that wasn't racist, for example. He would say it was racist, and I think that imagine if he'd been Martin Luther King, standing up there saying, let's heal between races. Let's have all the races come together and have, ceremonies of healing where we can love each other. He would have had an incredible effect. I believe that he's divided the races more in his tenure than for decades before, in my opinion.